Gagata is a greasy smelly orphan boy with no future in sight, but luckily just before this little rascal was taken by the wolves he stumbles across an infamous legendary sword previously wielded by 1,000 demons before him, then suddenly turns into an overpowered demon lord with unlimited power and can do things beyond his wildest imagination, and also taking a beauty by his side. Our story begins somewhere in the middle of an underground ancient ruin with a group of ugly researchers and some sweaty and 9-to-5 strewers who have been here for quite some time trying to uncover an infamous weapon of destruction capable of turning whoever wields it into the next legendary demon lord, and this weapon is known as the sword Zoline. While they are digging to find the sword, some serious looking fellows are seen in a helicopter flying over to the same ancient tomb trying to find the same sword as the researchers. The pilot and other man in the helicopter talk to their boss, otherwise known as the Administrator Maya, about the sword and said they don't understand why everyone cares about it so much and thinks it's a total waste of time to go looking for such an old sword. However, Maya tells them that if there were a hierarchy of weapons in this world, you can be sure that the sword Zulsky would no doubt be at the top of that list. They ask him why everyone wants it so badly, and Maya explains how this particular sword was forged out of the blood of exactly 1,000 demons, and the next person to touch it will be the 1,000 in first person, but normally humans can't control it unless the sword chooses you as its wielder. After another man sitting next to the boss named Asakijo informs Maya that the next person to possess it would also be gaining the power of all the previous demons who had wielded this sword and would become a very dangerous individual, so that's the reason they must find it first, so no one else can claim this kind of power. Back in the ruins, the skinny worker in charge of finding Zulsky explains to one of his construction workers how the origin of the sword came to be, and back in the Roman era, roughly around 2,000 years ago, a small Pourville village on the outskirts of the Roman Empire was randomly attacked by some samurai savages, just simply attacking the village for fun and to plunder what they had, taking all the women for themselves and destroying their homes to the ground. The village priests begged God for aid in their struggle but received no answer at all during their darkest times. As they received no answer from God, they gathered all the sheep in the village and made a sacrifice, praying to a demon god instead as their last hope. Surprisingly, the demon god answered their wishes, and then came along a vicious-looking demon knight figure as big as the Hulk who was wielding the sword named Zoline. This was the first being to ever wield it. He is a giant beast-looking thing sent from the demon god himself, and once he drew the sword out for the first time on Earth, they say it howled in the sound of a beast. When this demonic knight arrived at their village, the battle was basically over in an instant, wiping out the Roman samurai savages exactly as they wished him to do so, and right after, the same villagers bowed down before him and started to pray to him like he was their god. But the demon knight didn't want their pathetic prayers and told them they were all a bunch of brokies, and he started attacking the villagers that called upon him for help, and he basically started wiping out any type of life forms that stood in his way. Bro took the Sigma male lifestyle to a whole another level. After that, the demon lord decided to play his new favorite game, War Thunder, which is the sponsor of today's video. War Thunder is the most epic free-to-play game out there for all of us anime lovers. Dive into the most comprehensive vehicle combat game ever made. You can choose from over 2,000 different tanks, planes, helicopters, and ships, and battling other people in PvP battles. Every single one of these vehicles is designed really well with so much attention to detail, picked from a collection of vehicles that span from over 100 years of development, from the 1920s all the way up until the present day. My favorite is the Japanese one's helicopter Kisarazu skin, which stands out from everybody else in the server, but the best part is that you can customize any of these vehicles with over 1,000 different anime related skins, which is personally the most exciting addition of this game for me. And you can use unlimited community-made skins of your favorite waifu, but it gets even better as you can also download anime voice packs and listen to your crew talking like a bunch of weebs while dominating the server. So what are you waiting for? Download War Thunder right now, available on PC, Xbox, and PlayStation consoles, and you will receive your exclusive in-game bonuses by using my link in the description and claim an epic 3D Demura Animate pillow to add onto your tank. It's available for a limited time only. After some time, the researchers finally dig enough to enter inside another secret tomb, which seems to have several corpses and statues inside, and right in front there was some kind of hidden door. After cracking part of the wall, they see a golden glow light up the room, and they have finally found the sword Zoline. After thousands of years, however, right as they locate the sword, the people who are in the helicopter arrive. outside demanding that these smelly losers hand over Zolene immediately, and they state that they are with the Rare Weapons Administration team who handles ancient artifacts and legendary weapons from all around the world, but ZKY was almost impossible to find, so the workers refused to comply with the boss man himself, and an all-out war occurs between these elite Black Ops looking soldiers versus these ugly workers. They fire several bullets back and forth, but these elite soldiers were far more superior. That's when the boss of the ancient researchers grabs Zolene and tries to attack the soldiers while wielding the sword. The worker can now easily take out the elite soldiers and destroys them all within the matter of seconds. After that, he approaches the administrator Mira, but all of a sudden the man is seen to be having some kind of fit, and his eyes roll to the back of his head while screaming out words that no one can understand. It seems that he cannot handle the power of such a weapon, and that's when the right-hand man of Mira, Ajo, explains how the dark aura of Zion will swallow you whole if you're too weak of a person, making you unable to bond with the sword, so it cannot be used by a dumb skinny worker like him, and only by a top G. After Maya instructs Ajo to retrieve Zalskine from the man, and Ajo uses some kind of magical power, as Ajo seems to also be in possession of another legendary weapon of his own, and he uses this power to generate a strong energy force which knocks down the dumb worker, and safely securing Zalskine inside a metal container, they bring Zine back to the Legendary Weapons Administration Organization headquarters. They safely secure the weapon inside the facility and store it away with the rest of the other legendary weapons. Akito and me look at the weapon closely, and Akito thinks it's ugly, but Maya thinks it's absolutely beautiful, so Ajo laughs and said he's going to bed. After that, the weapon administration team go back to work, trying to find other weapons like Zalskine, as there are other demon swords out there which also have a lot of power, but nothing compared to Z-Skine. These swords have different types of abilities like turning you into a fire demon and many other side effects, so this organization is taking them for themselves and bringing them to their facility. However, one night the boss Mayat enters the facility where they store old Skine, as he seems to be drawn towards the sword and can hear it calling out his name. The sword can detect the love that Maya has for it, as Mara always speaks so highly of the sword, so it's given him a symbiotic relationship with it, and now he just can't seem to get away from the urge of wanting to touch the sword and to feel it in his own hands. At this moment, Maya is sick of being a worthless female and opens up the case containing Zolene and picks it up, and he finally feels like a real man for once and goes crazy. When wielding the sword, he embraces all its power, and the cursed energy takes over his entire body, awakening the demon once again. All of his subordinates quickly rush into the facility as the alarms start going off because Zalskine has been removed from its container, and the guards are then met by a demonized Maya staring right at them. As they tremble in fear, they immediately take out their guns and shoot at Demon Boy Maya, but Maya is now an invincible demon Gigachad, smiling while he takes out each of the guards one by one before leaving the building. After that, we are then taken to a different scene in the anime where we see an ordinary-looking man named Takashi who is arriving back home from his long day at work. His wife Wakaba is expecting a baby anytime now and has just went for her final checks today, but doesn't want to reveal its gender to the father just yet and wants this to be a surprise. But Takashi is super excited to meet his newborn baby and to finally be a father. And after the two of them leave home to quickly grab some treats from the store. Meanwhile, at a temple, we see a priest making a ritual trying to appease a sword named Shuriel. The man consents that the sword is crying inside and wants to taste blood, so to answer its call he makes a special ceremony for the sword, inviting his little minion friends inside, and they all gather around it, and in the room they pray to the sword. But the sword seems to be calling out to a particular special boy and tells him to drop some blood on the cloth that is hanging over the sword. After he does this, the boy gets excited and starts to lick it, turning him into an absolute maniac, and starts to take out all of his dumb friends who were invited to the party one by one. After eliminating all the peasants in sight, the sword starts to glow up with purple flames, and the demon within him is still hungry for more, so the demon boy heads outside to find some more snacks. While outside, Wakaba and Takashi are seen heading back from the grocery store with their Scooby snacks, and while walking home, the hungry demon boy is seen lurking about and knocks down Takashi. Wakaba is heartbroken and falls down beside him to see if he's awake, but he was eliminated by the demon boy after he proceeds to go after other civilians on the street until the boy wakes up and realized what he has just done is the sword was in control of him this whole time, and he drops the sword while screaming out how sorry he is. But after seeing Takashi is gone, Wakaba grabs the sword out of anger and uses it To kill the demon boy, and my dude gets some juicy instant karma after Wakaba is trying to get the demon out of her head, but her hand is apparently glued to the sword and she can't seem to drop it. At this moment we see Maya on a highway bridge with Zolene, and the security team asks him to drop it, however he refuses and a purple smoke releases from the sword, and at that moment a person with the second sword has now arrived, burning all the vehicles on the bridge and challenges Mira to a fight. Both of them have got one of these legendary weapons, and since they are so close to each other, the sword transformed forms both of them into Metal Knight-looking figures, and they now have some fancy Power Ranger armor. Maya explains how he is Zolene, the demon of death, and the other man calls himself the demon of fire, and they both start to fight in a crazy 1v1 duel match, but Maya and ZSKY and easily defeat the other guy within seconds as he's just too strong. After the epic battle we see a blacksmith strolling in the woods, and he stumbles across Waba's body on a tree. He is shocked to see the young woman like this, and before helping her down he hears the cries of a bad baby nearby, and there we see the baby holding the sword in his arms, and the man named Amon Adaj explains how this sword has such a dark aura he can even sense it from a mile away, and just then the baby holds his hand and the sword starts to speak to him as well, saying how he wants to live in somewhat again, and the man takes it upon himself to bring both of them with him and adopt the boy who was given the name Guy. Many years later, Guy has now grown up to become the edgy weeb he was destined to become. He doesn't like talking to people and his eyes only look at swords as if he will fight Kakashi in the Miss Sika, on the other hand, is a pretty normal high school student, but she refuses to take any boyfriends because she has been crushing for Guy for as long as she can remember. After school she directly comes home and gets escorted by the jealous boy Tatsumi. She always goes to meet Guy and asks him to go out with her on weekends, but he keeps his eyes down like a Sigma male and says that he is busy. Sika decides to grab his knife and plays a prank on him, and Guy tells her to cut it out, but then Tatsumi grabs him by the collar and tells her to know his place as a minor character. Just then Amon arrives on the scene and tells Sika to prepare for the ritual as they will be purifying the Shiro blade soon. Tatsumi doesn't like this because Guy is the only one who gets to feed his blood to the demonic blade, and he wants to feel cool as well. Amon tells him to grow up already and that Guy is special, but Tatsumi refuses to accept that, and on the day of the ritual he takes off his blindfold, and this lets the blade take over Sika, who is holding her, and makes her attack the Idot, but Guy refuses to let this chance miss and jumps in by pushing Tatsumi away and gets his arm chopped off, letting him evolve into the ultimate weeb who can do true cosplays of characters like Sasuke and future Gohan. After that they take him to the hospital, but he keeps crying like a loser. Even 1 week after getting discharged, Amon says that he is just grieving the loss of his missing arm, and Sika hugs him and tells him that she will always be there if he ever needs a hand. Get it? She then tells him that getting a surgery must cost an arm and that he should look into giving others a helping hand to earn some money on the side, and Guy starts thinking about his life decisions for once while he is unconscious from all the hand puns that Sika abused him with. Amon decides to give him a hand and melts the sword down to create a metal arm for him. He does the surgery, and when Guy opens his eyes he starts screaming internally, thinking just how cool his new arm looks and how he will be able to do even cooler cosplays like Ed from Full Metal Alchemist and Gilbert's from Fairy Tail, while on the outside he manages to utter some edgy words like "why did you waste you over me?" While all this is happening, the Shash Shirdai send in their trusty Agent 7 Mr. Mickey to participate in an auction to buy up the demonic weapon as off sword. The bid starts at $20,000 but escalates quickly to $1.5 million, just like the prices of eggs and bacon due to inflation. The bid ends up becoming a battle between Marcus, a Rickle-looking kid who could have been Batman in a wheelchair, and Mickey, but with access to all of the tax money. Mickey easily wins the battle and goes back home to the headquarters. On his way back, Marcus stops him by ambushing his car and offers to buy it for a fair price from him, or else he will have to use his thugs to break his legs. Mickey looks at the wheelchair and wonders if Marcus is just trying to be funny or just his humor is that bad, and then defeats his hired NPCs. In a second he tells the boy to shoo away, but suddenly Me arrives on the scene and says that he sensed a strong blade nearby and wants to challenge him to some real-life Fruit Ninja battle. Mickey tells him that he doesn't have any change and fights him back with his own legendary Thunder Sword phone, which lets him run away like a chicken. He thinks that he managed to get away with the sword this time, but then turns around to see that Marcus ran away with the sword when he wasn't looking back at the swordsmith workshop. Ammon tells Guy to keep this arm close to him and to use this newfound strength to create a sword even stronger than Shur. After that he walks out and starts up a flame and burns his scabbard. Sika wonders why he did it, and Guy tells her that there is no blade that can match Suru, and that it was a special sword back at the workshop. Tatsumi asks Ammon why he destroyed the legendary sword for Guy and if he is just that important for him, and Ammon tells him that in his 40 years of life he hasn't managed to create a sword he can be proud of so far, but now, by combining Shir with Guy, he wonders if Guy will become something that he can be proud of. A few days later, when Sika is coming back home from her school, Tatsumi comes to escort her as usual, but on their way he decides to lose his V card, because otherwise he has no other choice. He knows that he is just a dumb loser and his only chance was sucking up to Ammon, but now he has chosen Guy as his favorite slave, and so he won't be able to get Sika at all. Just then Guy arrives on the scene and pushes Tatsumi away. Tatsumi tries to punch him back, but Guy simply blocks it with his metallic arm and then makes him kiss the ground like a good boy. Shoe killing and tense starts taking over his mind, and he starts turning into a sword zombie, but Sika tells him to stop, and he comes back to his senses. After that he gets back to the workshop and starts banging his head on the wall to make the voices stop, but it's all in vain. Looking at him going crazy like that, Sika hugs him from behind and tells him that she is there for him, and this makes him calm down properly. On the other hand, rich boy Marcus wakes up in his fancy yet lonely villa and is greeted by his fake younger sister and online bot parents. He gets sick of living with fake people and tells them all to go away and starts burning in his rage. Back at Shash headquarters, Mickey learns that Marcus got in an accident with his family which I scared the Malin Narnia while he was left paralyzed from his waist down, having lost the ability to stand up, and anyway he seeks help from many doctors to become healthy, but all of them refuse to operate on him in defeat. Some days later his ex-girlfriend comes to meet him and tells him that she will be getting married soon, and the groom is none other than his best friend Johnny. She tells him that he might have committed a lot of sins, but she loves him and that he isn't invited to the wedding as they are planning to keep it private. Marcus looks at her dumb face while smiling and tells her that he will be praying for them from all his heart, and then watches her leave as he plans his sweet revenge. Just then the demonic sword that he stole from Mickey answers to his revenge-thirsty soul and gives him the ability to stand up once again, and he decides to go and crash their wedding and starts by turning the priest into Sasham, but before he can do any harm Mickey jumps in from the window and blocks his attack. He then tells the cheaters to go and run for their life, but Marcus uses his demonic powers and appears right in front of them, but just before he is about to strike the girl he stops himself and lets the good angel when Nikki arrives on the scene and offers to let him come to the Shash Shurdai with him. He tells him that it is a palace for people like themselves, and on their way he explains that Shash Shurdai is an organization which keeps watch over legendary swords and their wielders. In essence, when someone takes hold of a legendary weapon, the weapon starts corrupting them until they become manslaying monsters called Bua. While becoming a boos is inevitable, some people can resist the turning process and slow down the process. Such people like themselves are called chrysalis, and Shashi is experimenting to find ways to cure them of their curses so they can return to their old lives, but until then they are put to sleep to slow down the turning process. Meanwhile, a girl walks into Ammon's workshop and hands over a legendary spear by the name of Oki to Tatsumi. It turns out Ammon is not home, so he takes it to the master's place, and the girl says that she was supposed to sharpen it, so now she is here to return it to Ammon. Once she goes away, Tatsumi takes the spear out of its wrapping cloth and becomes Asoma, and the first person he attacks is none other than Full Metal Guy, with Tatsumi going on the offensive with the legendary spear. Guy's arm starts tingling as well, and it starts taking over his mind. He doesn't become Asoma but totally loses his mind, and the arm transforms into a blade. He starts fighting Tatsumi, and their battle leads them through the woods and into the city. During their battle, Guy manages to strike through his ribs and manages to make him bleed. After that, Tatsumi runs into the city and transforms into his Power Ranger form and tries to jump at him with his spear, but Guy dodges back and then stabs him through his armor, making him cry like a demon lord. Just then the Illuminati people send in some helicopters to take them down, but Guy strikes one of them down with a wind slash and then runs back to the workshop and returns to normal. His arm tries to hurt him, but Ammon grabs it and makes it stop being crazy. Meanwhile, Mickey takes Marcus to the headquarters and hands him over to Administrator Kyoka. She takes him to meet the leaders, who turn out to have an alien X fetish and use AI to talk to them with these big 5 heads. In the meantime, Mickey goes for his medical checkup before going in for his sleep in the freezer. But let's forget about all that for a moment and appreciate him rising the nurse up, even though he will meet her next. After many years after his examination, he goes back to meet up with Kyoka and Marcus, and they walk inside the storeroom to put their weapons away. With that out of the way, Kyoka sends them away for their cryogenic nap and heads back to the main station to receive the news of Tubua fighting in the city to take them down. She decides to awaken their strongest chrysalis, Ado, from a 16-year-long nap and makes him go after them in the mountains. Meanwhile, Maya invades a prison to feed his sword. With the anger and rage of all the prisoners in there. And back at the workshop, Tatsumi sneaks inside and hides in the shadows to ambush Guy. On the other hand, Guy has mentally turned into a baby, and Ammon thinks that it must be due to him becoming afraid of Shi's power, and now he wants to just hide away like a baby in the womb to protect himself. Back at the headquarters, Kaya reveals that long ago there was a kingdom that opposed God, and to punish them God sent down a ring of light that raised the entire kingdom to the ground. After the light vanished, there was not even a single blade of grass left from the kingdom, and in the sand only the weapon of God Chakam remained. After that, people worshipped it as an object from God and then sealed it away to keep them safe. Now Ajo is the person who wields this weapon, and he is most certainly their strongest soldier in the meantime. Guy is still acting like a baby and runs off into the forest to see his mother's grave. It starts raining and he starts crying while looking at her tombstone. Sika walks up to him and decides to take care of him and tells him that she will take him to the festival. At the same time, Ammon meets up with his old master and shows him a blade that he created. He still seems unsatisfied and tells him about his decision to merge Shi with Guy, and says that he has faith in him becoming his ultimate creation. Besides that, they wonder if there is another Shu, and if that is true, then the one that they had was the lesser of the two, as it didn't have any name on it. While all this is happening, the sword sharpener Kiyomi is enjoying her time looking at her apprentice sharpening a blade and tells him about the history and importance of their craft. Just then they receive an urgent order from someone rich, and the sword to be sharpened turns out to be the true Shu. The blade almost takes control of Kiyomi, but she manages to quench its thirst for blood by feeding it some of her own, and after an intense session of working on it, she manages to complete the task. The client turns out to be a mysterious old man, and he walks away with the sword just as quickly as he came with it. On the other hand, Mira is enjoying some piano in a hall and gets ambushed by the new owner of the flame sword. Flamberget calls out to him and says that they are both legendary ancient weapons, and so they must settle the score, but Mira says that he is not the same, as he has never been defeated, while Flambrige has lost to him once before. After that, they turn into their Power Ranger forms and start fighting on the rooftop. Their battle is witnessed by a number of Boma, including a powerful-looking Reaper called Grimps. As for the results of their battle, Mira easily defeats him and proves his superiority once and for all. Back in the city, Sika enjoys the festival with Baby Brain Guy and finally takes him to a shrine and makes a wish for him to recover and be safe, and for him to give her attention when he turns back to normal. Just then they are ambushed by Tatsumi and his Power Ranger form, and he walks forward to strike Sika. Guy stops his attack with his arm, but then sits down in the corner like the baby he is. Tatsumi grabs her by her neck and says that he will put an end to her misery, but then his arm gets cut off, and we turn around to see Akijo rocking his chakram. He starts fighting him one-on-one and easily one-shots him with his special ability that binds him in a ring of light and then melts him away from the inside out. After defeating him, he turns around and proceeds to walk away, wondering why they woke him up for such a weak opponent. But then he feels the demonic gaze from Guy's arm and he realizes that the baby boy is his actual target. After that, he walks up and punches Guy in the face, making him fall back. He starts crying while calling his mama, and Sika tries to protect him, but Ajo makes her stand aside and grabs him by the collar. He tells him to show him his true colors, but then the old man Kaido arrives on the scene and he tells Ajo that he must be with the Shushi and tells him to come along. He takes him to his house and says that he knows their counterpart called Gabby as well. In essence, Gabby are regular humans who train their spirits to fight Bisa, While Shurdai fights them using chrysalis, he introduces him to a Gabi known as So and We All. Noe plays top lane. He challenges Ajo to a battle and forces him to use his weapon, but during their fight Guy notices a Bua coming out of his shadow and he tries to make it go away with a stone, so thinks that he is messing with him and picks him up by his collar, but then the Bua in his shadow comes out and strikes through his back. After that it starts attacking Guy and he transforms into his battle form as well. While enraged he takes down me, and then turns back normal and runs into they. Woods. As the old man keeps Ajo busy with his weird behavior, he tells him that he will take him to someone who knows more about the boy and his sword, and takes him to Ammon. They talk about Guy's past and how he grew up, and Ajo realizes that he is much similar to himself. Meanwhile, Sekat and Guy hide in a cave in the woods where they used to play together when they were little. It looks like fighting again and trying to man up brought him back to his senses, and he is now acting normal once again. Which means his depression and trauma are back as well. He tells Sika how he doesn't have any good memory of his childhood and that he has been running from the darkness all his life in the fear that it might take him it, but now he has decided to forge swords with his own hands and to cut down this world to make way for a world where he can belong. Sika starts wondering what kind of crack he is on, but lets the rain pass away before walking back home. Once they reach back, Ajo invites him to come to Shushi with him if he is looking for a new world where he belongs, and then takes him with himself. With that, the Keto drives him towards the Shurdai headquarters, but tells him that he has to run an errand on their way, so he will be tagging along. This errand turns out to be a visit to an old lady named Kay. She looks probably old enough to be Ao's mother, but in reality she is his girlfriend. Ajo explains the whole sleeping in ice and being frozen in time thing to Guy, and says that Kay is one loyal woman who waited for him even though he himself didn't know how long it will take before he will be awakened. When they first met in high school she was 1 year younger than him, but now she is an old yet beautiful lady. After that he tells him to go get himself busy somewhere else so he can spend some time with his sweetheart. Being the gentleman he is, he takes care of her greatly and dances with her on their favorite old song, and even paints her toes. He takes her on a vacation to the beach and finally proposes to her and helps her get dressed in a wedding gown before putting her to rest in the bed with a love-filled kiss. Meanwhile, Guy goes out to the city and gets inside a crowded hall which looks like a stage for some concert, but it turns out to be a bunch of sweaty gamers jamming to their idol and streamer Digimagmidoro. They play a Street Fighter style battle game and she wins the match like a pro and ends the performance with a song of her own. Guy wonders what this weebish concert was all about, but then walks out of the hall without wasting more time. On the other hand, the opponent, who lost to Mito, acts like a freak in front of her and they end up having a quarrel in the alley behind the hall. The guy starts beating her like a ragdoll, but unfortunately for him the beat-up Flam Bridge is looking for a new body and it presents itself to the girl. Mito picks up the sword and it takes control over her immediately. After that it plays some Fruit Ninja with the guy in front of her, and then climbs on top of a building and starts shooting fireballs everywhere like a maniac. While all this is happening, the headquarters try to contact Ajo, but he's too busy making the last moments of his wife happy, so Guy ends up having to keep the boy in front of him busy. He transforms his arm into the sword version, but this time he is still under control. He fights her for a little bit, but he still doesn't know what he is actually doing and ends up getting pushed on the ground anyways. Then Ajo arrives on the scene and launches a bunch of light circles at her. She blocks them all and then decides to run away because getting beat by more than one hot guy isn't in the Flame Sword's bucket list. Guy asks if they should follow her, but Akito says that he's not in the mood, and they just get back into the car. Somewhere in the ocean, a rich fat lady rests over a chair that is constantly begging God to either let it break away or to call the woman back up. She is Yuko, the rich lady who has hired a bunch of treasure hunters and a professor to find the famous lost treasure of Captain Jack Sparrow, but in hopes of finding his lost jar of sand, they stumble upon the not-so-famous treasure of the pirate Throa. She wants all the gold and silver in it, but the professor is there to find the legendary Galen's hammer. It is said to be a weapon known for its heavy strikes and durability, which can shatter other blades, and reign supreme. Their search goes on for quite some time, and eventually the divers manage to find the treasure and they all party with the gold around them. They never find the hammer, but once the gold is in front of them, the professor starts showing his greedy side. He turns the whole treasure hunt into a boat murder mystery and starts strangling all the members one by one. Eventually, he gets struck down by the mistress's bellboy Billy, but he has also grown balls and tries to put down his master. He ends up pushing her into the ocean, but unlike Big Mom, Yuko hasn't eaten a devil fruit and she ends up falling to the ocean floor besides Galen's hammer. The hammer takes control of her body and makes her swim up, and she strikes Billy down and claims the whole treasure for herself. Meanwhile, somewhere in the city there is a famous model and hairdresser by the name of Isi. His backstory goes something like this: one night he found his sister and some of her friends murdered by a girl with long blonde hair that shines under the moonlight. He has been living all his life in search of her to take his revenge, and that's why he always carries a shotgun with him in a bag while going about his business. One day he finally comes across this woman, and after dressing her hair he walks out in front of her and shoots her down, but to his surprise the bullet wounds simply heal up and she reveals herself to be a boa with two weapons and gives the ice sword Nebi's stigma to him. She tells him that one day he will transform into a boa as well and to enjoy his life. Until that time, after that one day while dressing a customer's hair, his hand starts twitching, and this customer turns out to be none other than the boa of Galen's hammer, Yasuko. Back at the headquarters, Kyoko awakens Mickey and Marcus and assigns them their first mission together. They must infiltrate the famous real estate company where the owner is rumored to have bought the legendary weapon halberd from a foreign owner. The weapon is said to grant its wielder with the power of a 100 man if used for justice, but at the same time it can cause massive destruction if used for evil. Shashurdai nurse and Mickey's secret girlfriend Nina has already infiltrated the company as a personal nurse and secretary for the CEO and has acquired the floor plans as well as passwords and access keys for them to get down in the basement and get the weapon out of the safe. Make and Marcus suit up like brothers and then walk down the street to meet Mina. They enter the building and tell the receptionist to tell the CEO's secretary that there are men from I Miss You Incorporated to meet him, and they will know the message gets delivered. And they meet up in her office. Marcus gets surprised when he finds out that Mickey and Mina are in a relationship, and Mickey tells him to keep it a secret because it is not allowed in their line of business. After that, she gives them the keys and the passwords and tells them that the halberd is stored inside a massive safe in the basement and they can reach it through the vent ducts from the men's washroom. After that, they both suit up in their 007 costumes and walk to the washroom. Without letting the cameras pick them up, they manage to do it thanks to Marcus' sword's ability, which makes them invisible for a short time. After that, they get inside the ducts and go to the safe room and unlock the door, but to their surprise, instead of the halberd, they are greeted by another safe door, and Mickey tells Mina that they might need another password for it. Meanwhile, Marcus manages to idiotically trigger the security system by accidentally letting his eye get scanned. Soon the room starts filling up with gas and they try to cut through the safe with their weapons, but it proves useless. They ask Mina to find the password and she tries, but gets caught by the CEO, who turns out to be the boa of the halberd. Hearing her scream over the phone, Mickey cuts through the vent ducts and instantly arrives at her location and finds halberd about to strike her down. He tells Marcus to jump forward and then runs in himself to block the hit for Mina. With that, he runs his blade through halberd's armor and destroys its vessel, but the weapon still lives on and it makes itself get absorbed in him as well, making him a chrysalis with two legendary weapons. Na and Marcus worry about his condition, but he says that he is too awesome to get sick and then takes Mina out on a date. At the end of their date, Mickey loses control and almost transforms into a boa. Still, he lets the weapons run rampant and causes a lot of destruction. He is about to send Mina to another world, but then Guy and Ajo arrive on the scene and fight him until his condition becomes stable. The fight proves to be really intense, but at the end, with the help of some plot armor and luck, Guy manages to defeat the hybrid boa and return Mickey to his human form. After that, Mickey, Marcus and Mina return to the headquarters and run a test on Mickey and realize that it's too late for him and the most they can do is extract the weapons out of him. Mina tells him that he should be fine and the test results suggested that he will be better after the cold sleep, but when the time comes they put Marcus to sleep first and then destroy Mickey inside the capsule to extract the weapon. And for the last shot, we find out that the true player was Mina all along, who did it all on the organization's orders and was playing a part as Mickey's girlfriend to keep him obedient to the organization. A few days later, we see a rich silver-haired young boy named Shin attend some meetings with people looking to open an orphanage in an elderly home. He promises to fund both projects, but there seems to be an issue, and that is that both parties are looking to use the same building. While Shin is a fine young man, he also possesses the legendary True Shoe and can hear its cries. Despite all that, instead of turning into an edgelord like Guy, he decides to be a cool person like Kakashi, and he helps others, greets them cheerfully, and even manages to rise up Guy's childhood friend Sika. On his way back home after his meetings with the project managers, he goes to the location of the building and suggests that they open a combined facility to take care of orphans and elderly together. This way they will be able to provide a great environment for all of them, and promise to fund the project himself if they agree upon it. On his way back, he finds some hooligans messing with Sika, who is going back home, and he steps in to make them stop, but instead of fighting back, he just stands there like a pretty boy and gets himself beaten up to the ground. Later on, the bad boys walk on and run into Digimag, who is now the Flame Sword's Boma. They try to take her aside, but she makes their legs shake in fear. By pulling out her long sword from under her shirt, she hacks one of them down and lets the other one run away like an NPC. For the ambience, surprisingly, Guy happens to be in the same area, and he jumps in to protect Sika and the other people. He starts fighting the Flame Sword, but she remembers how she got beat the last time, and decides to run away with some vanishing flame magic. On the other hand, Akito is confronted by Merit and realizes that his old friend has now become a Boma. He says that he will put him to rest with his own 2 hands, but he vanishes away into the darkness and tells him that they will meet again soon. The next day, Shin decides to join C's class, and I don't know about him, but my boy Guy is losing his game due to being an edgelord. Shin joins the school to grow closer to Sika, so he can get information about Guy out of her. He wants to know who is the guy with the other half of Shu, but at the same time he is simply an outstanding individual and makes all the girls around fall for him with his Riz pheromones and green paper. After learning about Guy's identity, he thanks Sika for helping him out and listens to her talking about how they used to play together when they were kids. On the other hand, Guy and the Kido finally get back to the headquarters and get an earful from Kyoka. She welcomes and tells Ajo to report back for his cold sleep, but he says that he has some business to take care of before that, and so he won't be sleeping anytime soon. He then reveals that he had this feeling that he had seen her somewhere before, and he just realized that she is actually Meia's little daughter. He tells her that he ran into his bua and wants to take it down. She goes to the elders' room and tells them about the situation, and they say that they have been developing a secret weapon to fight Bomas, and will be using them on Meia. Meanwhile, we see that Mina goes under a memory install and a plastic surgery to become similar to Marcus' ex-girlfriend Erica, and her new job is to keep him on her leash so he remains loyal to the organization just like his Sing friend. Right now they don't have any cure for returning Buas or Chrysalis into humans, and so they have to eventually put all of them down themselves to keep the living ones loyal. They must create reasons for them to stay and obey their orders, and that's how they play this game back on the battlefield. Meia walks in and is ambushed by a squad of the Illuminati robots, but he simply crushes them all like some toys and wonders when Ajo will come to give him a serious fight. Watching the robots fall one after another, Kyoko requests Ajo to go and put her father's soul to rest, and he says that he will be taking his bell boy Guy alongside him for field experience. After that, they both make a cool entry in front of Meia and prepare to fight as Ajo activates his Chakam and faces off against him. Before the final battle, Ajo makes Guy promise that if he were to turn into a Bua during their fight, he must slay him. Guy asks him if he didn't say that he was weak, and Ajo says that in that moment, when he slays him, he will have his answer back. In the present time, they start their battle with Meia launching an energy wave attack, but Ajo dodges it swiftly and strikes back with multiple light energy rings. Mira cuts through them all and then stands still with his sword in front of him. Ajo shoots him with multiple energy rings, but Meia simply rushes through them with his sword and engages him in close combat. As the fight drags on, Ajo starts losing more and more stamina and energy, and his weapon grows weaker. He starts getting hit by Myra's energy attacks and his movement becomes sluggish. Still, he manages to match up against him and at one point captures him in his light ring and goes for the final strike. But just then his Bua factor grows and he loses all his power. Meia breaks away from the light ring and then sends him flying with an energy wave attack. He then transforms into his armored form and starts walking towards an injured Ajo and says that he did good for a Chrysalis, but now it's time for him to go to sleep once and for all. Things look bad for him as Meia goes in for the final strike, but Guy decides to finally show that the name of this anime is Sword Guy and not Sword Ajo, and steps in to block the attack. He tells Akito to tap out for the time being and rest up as they won't be able to take him out alone. He then starts fighting against him in an intense sword fight. While he matches him up, the Kido decides to support him from behind by shooting a bunch of energy rings, and Guy takes this chance to deliver a heavy hit to the Demon Blade. It looks like they will finally win as Guy rushes in for a final strike, but his attack gets stopped by Grim, who has been watching their battle from the sky. He turns around and tells Mira that it would be a shame to lose him right Now so he will be giving him a helping hand this time. Kijo tells Guy about Grim and how he is the first ever Bua to ever come into existence. He says that they won't be able to defeat him on their own, but with no other choice left, Guy lets out a battle cry and charges straight at the raid boss in front of him. They start exchanging blows and Goo's transformation starts taking over with every hit as he draws more and more power out of Shu. In the end, he completely transforms into Shu's armored form, but Ajo stops him with his rings and lets him kill himself so he can bring him back to senses. As Guy runs his blade through a Kijo lets himself transform into a Bua and emerges from the light as a fully armored Chakram Boma. With that, the two titans face each other and prepare to fight in a deadly battle. War Thunder is free to play right now on PC, Xbox, and PlayStation consoles, so make sure to download War Thunder for free using my link in the description and claim the anime body pillow pack. If you're new or haven't played for 6 months, it's available for a limited time only. Even if you're already a dedicated soldier, don't worry, because every person who uses my link will get the body pillow. Thanks for watching, my fellow plot boys. Watch this next video and take care.